Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, and with me, as always, I have the holiest of holies. It's the Reverend Tracy. How are you doing?
I am good. How about you, Tim?
Doing good. I see it looks like the Mr. Reverend's there, so I will talk on while you quickly answer the question.
You can tell by the look on my face that I was answering a question. I'm going to just message him because, see, that's what's cool is we have technology. But go ahead.
All right. Yeah, it's been a good week, but a busy week for me. I have a big project in comics class that I have to do, and that's coming up with a 5-page paper on a comic creator. And so what I thought would be cool is kind of learning a little bit about Jerry Siegel, the guy who created Superman. And reading a book right now called Super Boys. It's kind of a biography of both Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Joe Shuster was the original artist. And it is really fascinating hearing kind of like they were at the very infancy of what we consider pop culture today. You know, I mean, they were very much students of the old pulp era in terms of, the fantastic magazines that came out with stories of like Tarzan or John Carter of Mars, and how they were able to take that and, adapt that to the comics medium. It's just a really, really fascinating story and relatable in a lot of ways too, because Siegel and Shuster, before they got recognized by National Allied Publications that became DC Comics, they were hustling. They were making their own magazines that they somehow got ads like in a national magazine trying to get people to submit stuff to them. They were part of the original nerd culture, because I guess with a lot of those pulp magazines, they would have like sections at the end where readers could submit their own mail, and then what the editors would do is put the actual address of the person sending it, so people were able to communicate with each other. And a lot of those people ended up becoming just really famous for creating science fiction, for their work in comics. It's a really fascinating book, really fascinating topic. But how have you been?
Great, honestly. Like, all considered, we finally got a place. So, I mean, it's been no secret that I'm moving. We're going coast to coast here at Friends Talking Nerdy. We're about to be in both Portlands at the same time, which is really funny when we think about it. But yeah, wow. So this is a common time of year for people to move. And I thought it might be worth sharing the anxiety-stoking experience that this can be for somebody who deals with anxiety. I mean, I'm sure Tim might even readily agree with me that moving, even within the state, within the same town, can really just trigger you in unexpected ways, just without complications, right?
Yeah, I mean, like in 2019, I ended up moving to Vancouver for a year, and that was a huge culture shock. After living, 4 years in Portland and, utilizing Max, the TriMet on a daily basis, going up there to what they call public transit is a different story altogether. So.
Oh, yeah. See, that was actually kind of a good, culture shock for me, because I came from Arizona, which is the land of, if you take the bus, you might not make it to work during the summer because they just get so hot. No joke. The buses get so hot, they just basically just don't work anymore. Things go wrong with the engine. I had to rely on the bus very few times, and it was unfortunately during the summer, and that was how I learned such things. But
oh man.
Yeah, so I've moved because I'm originally from Texas. I lived in Arizona for a hot minute, and now I'm up here in Oregon. And now I'm going across again, but this is the first time I'm actually moving, not moving in with somebody that I already know. I had been fortunate enough that with my last 2 moves, I already knew somebody that was there or had met somebody right before they were moving there in the case of coming here to Oregon. And so I was able just to kind of oh, hey, Insta roommate situation or romantic relationship thing that happened, So this is the first time I'm actually having to find a place this way. And wow, it's very interesting, because even though we did finally get it, because to go back just a second, I found this place and it's basically perfect. It's everything that we want, everything that we've even we talk to our stepkids, be what kind of things would you like, to get them kind of excited about this too. Right. And so everything plus some and well within like, budget and all of the boxes being ticked, right? So this place is perfect. I am excited. I call them. They say it's open. They send me the application. The application starts fucking up. We give up and go to sleep. So I called the next morning, and the person says, "Oh, well, I guess somebody else was already in the process of putting a holding fee on it. So they already have it now." And I'm like, so wait a second. You mean to tell me that in the time that you emailed me and I started that application, somebody else just snuck right in there and had done it already? And it was nice because the Mr. Reverend could kind of tell that I was getting, because, hey, I thought I had a place, and now suddenly I don't think I have a place. Some might understand how that would maybe provoke some anxiety feelings.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit. So he kind of gives me, that little, that sign of, hey, maybe you should wrap this up. He just kind of gives me a hand sign. And so I take a breath, and I'm like, he's totally right, because I could feel, me potentially exploding all over this poor woman, and it's not her fault, right? Uh-huh. So anyway, I guess that person wound up taking their thing. They decided, never mind. So we were able to finish it. So yay, happy again, right? The anxiety is now subsided because there is now a resolution. I've got a solution to this problem that I really need a solution to. So that happens. Mr. Reverend goes to class. So we think this whole thing is over. And then I get the email on my phone because we have a house account type thing. So, but when he's in school, that's off so it doesn't disrupt him because he's in class, right? His phone's off. But that way I can see when things need to be responded to. And I see, you've been denied. I was just like, what the fuck? And there's all this another message coming in saying, oh, we're refunding you the holding fee. We're doing all these things. It's canceled. I'm like, what is going on? So I was like, I'm not going to cry. I just got on the phone and I walked out. And it was a really frustrating thing to even sort out why it happened. But here's what's silly. So I moved in 2015. To Portland, Oregon. Uh-huh. I guess there was a bill from the city, a city I lived in Arizona, from 2017 that was sent to collections. Now, why this only came up now, oh my God, let that be the way you find out something like that, right? So, long story short, what wound up happening is I guess an old roommate didn't close out a bill or something, a final bill in the house that I broke away from to come here, because I wound up leaving before the lease was up. Because funny side note, one day, I hate to brag, but I wrote a stand-up joke about that restraining order I filed once. So, I wasn't leaving in the best state of mind. So it's to me, it's as soon as she said city of blank, I went, oh my God, I know what this is about. So I was able to pay it, and I had to jump through hoops. I had to go to their bank and put it into their account in cash and do this whole thing. Jeez. But oh my God, there was at least 2 or 3 times I almost went, well, I guess we're just gonna be homeless. We're gonna live in the car. I'm done trying. I quit. But I persevered. I pushed through. I fought off at least 2 panic attacks that morning. So I'm feeling pretty great about it. It was earned, damn it. We've got a place now. So for those that are also dealing with moving, because summer is a big time to move. That's why moving companies get more expensive. Trucks get pricier during the summer. That's something that we learned. We tried to price things months ago, and then we're pricing them now, and it's $1,000 more for something. I was like, holy shit. So it is not just you guys. It is a crazy time of year to move. So we do try to be fairly open about talking about mental health stuff here on the show, even though that's not the main topic that we try to focus on. So I just wanted to put that message out there to anybody else having to deal with moving, and anybody else having to deal with oh my God, is my credit going to pass? Is this going to be da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and how you can get down those rabbit holes. just breathe and don't condone being homeless. Like, it's okay. Just breathe and make the next call. It definitely worked out this time. So that is just such a huge weight off of my shoulders. So stick in there. You can make it through. I just can't believe that had to be the way that I found out. Like, you'd think they would have called me, because for anybody that knows me, I still have my Arizona number. Like, I wasn't trying to be elusive when I left.
And let me guess, this bill was probably like a $20 or like some ridiculous small amount.
I mean, it was doable for me because it wasn't like hundreds and hundreds. Let me go ahead and stop that. Was it like as easy as like $20? No. But was it like something that I was going to track somebody down and like make them pay me back? No. It's just like, oh, okay, this is kind of an expensive convenience fee for this to be done right now, but you're saying I can pay this right now and then we can have this? And it's like, yes.
Yeah.
Just all of the things that could go wrong, I just felt like went wrong. But it just goes to show, if you really do want something, sometimes you do have to work for it, and maybe it'll still pay out. But it definitely wouldn't have, if any of the times I was really tempted just to throw up my hands and quit, if I had just quit. So, but we have a place that's I can breathe.
Yes, I mean, at least you don't have to worry about bats. Wow, I had a fun event happen the other day here. The professor and I were getting ready for bed in the bedroom, and things are kind of getting warmer in Portland, so a lot of times, folks will have like a t-shirt or even less on. And then all of a sudden we start hearing this noise. And it starts getting louder, and I'm freaking out thinking somebody's breaking in. So like I'm running out of the bedroom into the living room, and I'm yelling like, "Hey!" at like top volume, thinking somebody was breaking in. But then I realized that we had left the window by the dining room open, and all the windows here that do open have screens, so it wasn't like anybody was breaking in, and I didn't hear anything at the time. So I closed the window. And the moment I did that, a freaking bat just flew directly at the window. And oh my God, I ran out of the room screaming. It's like that season 6, episode 1, and I watched it recently, which is why I know which one specifically, but season 6, episode 1 of The Simpsons, Bart of Darkness, where Bart breaks his leg, and it's kind of a takeoff on Rear Window, where he thinks he sees Flanders kill his wife, but it was really a plant. And they ask at the end, Bart says, well, I heard a woman scream, and then something causes Flanders to scream, and it's him screaming like a woman.
Yes, I remember that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So bat in your life, huh?
Yeah, and it hit the. I mean, luckily, like the window didn't break or anything like that. And I had such a massive anxiety attack because of that. I was like in the bedroom and just shaking, and I just had to really breathe it off. But the funny part is, our cats. Phil was sitting on there's an old chair that's next to the table by that window there that he was sleeping on. Like when this started, he was sleeping, but then he poked his head up like, oh, doesn't concern me, and then went back to bed. But Sherman, on the other hand, heard the disturbance, and he was like, oh, hell no, and then jumped up on the dining room table, which is like right next to that window. We put it there intentionally so, during the day he can get some air, and he just went nuts, started hissing and growling at the window and started scratching at it, and whatever. Yeah, that bat just kept on trying for like a couple of minutes, kept trying to get at the window. I don't know what the hell was going on, but just it creeped me the hell out. But I guess I'm Batman now, so there is that. So
when animals kind of, I notice like the same animal or type of bird or whatever like comes around, I'm kind of a little side nerded out. I will look up like what they mean as totem animals or spirit animals. Mm-hmm. And so real quick for you, Tim. The bat totem animal represents letting go of fear and being free from them. As per actually says symbology. That's funny. As per bat symbology, bat totem animal unlocks your deepest fears and sets you free. When a bat comes, it is the death of fears and rebirth of someone who is going to live a life free from fears. Just maybe not free from fear of bats, because that seems pretty scary. Like, it just kind of kept running into your... It's like, be free from fear, Tim!
Something like that, but man, that was just... That was like the first bat I've ever seen, like, in person. And I don't like them, period, because they are flying rats. And
they're little fuzzies. Oh, come on.
care.
They have the cutest faces, just not when they're like licking blood or anything gross. Just as long as they're in their little, like, tucked in their wings, I think they're adorable.
I don't want to see the wings, ew. No.
Oh, come on. Oh, they're cute. Actually, one of my friends, I just went on a vacation where they got to go into some caves, and she very intentionally sent me a picture of these teeny tiny bats, because they're just little bitty guys, and they happened to be sleeping, and they're not always like there when people come through, so they were able to get some pictures of teeny tiny little curled up sleeping bats. I think they've got adorable little faces, but I do find kind of creepy things cute. Like, I also really I'm very open to admitting that I think spider paws are adorable. Like, if you zoom in, have you ever seen the pictures of spider paws?
No.
Oh, it is. It's like a little two-pawed and little bitty claws. They're little tiny. And I don't know, they're just kind of fuzzy and cute. Ever since I saw a picture of them, I was like, spider paws. But I find cuteness in creepy things, I guess.
I just looked it up on Google, and I mean, it looks like a cat's paw, but it's on a spider.
Right, but so if you just take away the rest of it, the paw just looks like it's supposed to belong to this cute little animal. That's what I would say. Like, it doesn't look like that's what a spider's paw would look like. And ever since it was pointed out, I just am now like, spider paws. But don't walk on me. Just no.
Yeah, no, or big ones, small ones. Even though they do say, like, what is it? Humans unintentionally eat like up to 9 spiders a year in their sleep.
Yep.
Just ew.
Yeah, I get why some people get like weirded out by that one. Like, I don't kill them. I don't like it when they're on me. Like, I think the only times I've ever killed any insect really is like when it's on me unexpectedly. Because then it's just like, I smack it. It's just what I do. It's instinct. It's something that I can't fight. Sorry, like other students out there. I kill bugs that land on me and they startle me. I don't mean to. It's just what happens.
It reminded me of an old Late Night with David Letterman bit. He had a woman on that was a scientist and had bugs on, and she put like a grasshopper on his right shoulder, and then when she turned her head, he hit his left shoulder just to see what she would do. And she freaked out.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I do try to catch spiders though, because mostly like they're harmless. Like, most of them can't really hurt you. They're very few and far between, and they really keep a lot of pests out of your house.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't want them
hilarious.
in the house per se, but like outside, seeing a spider's web pop up, especially after like a drizzle on the outside and seeing like raindrops coming off of them. Visually, they can look cool, and I guess from a distance they can look cool. But yeah, when I go to the zoo, I avoid the insect section. I don't want to see a tarantula in its cage. I don't want that thought. I just think of I forgot the James Bond movie in particular, but it was one of the Connery ones where they had like a tarantula walk across his chest, and ew.
Oh yeah, see, that stuff used to really freak me out. Sorry, I think it's really funny because we're talking about spiders, and there's totally one like chilling out on my desk with me right now, and I'm trying to get a picture of him that doesn't suck, but I can hear you.
And we can put that on the group page.
Yeah, totally. I got a Spider-Man that's like, see, we're not that scary, Tim. Tracy understands us.
Well, hey, look at me. I'm the one screaming like a girl when a bat comes around. But it's
okay.
special.
I'm actually just going to let him decide where he's going to go now. I'm just going to leave him be.
Well, we had a special holiday come up here recently that you want to talk about.
Oh, yes, because we kind of realized we didn't even really mention Mother's Day at all. And so something that, to be fair, like everybody kind of knew it was Mother's Day. I wanted to bring a little bit of awareness to a lesser-known holiday, Stepmother's Day, which is actually the Sunday after. And there was kind of a cute little story about it. So I think I've already mentioned, like, there's another podcast I listen to that I really like them. It's a newer one, so any other stepmothers out there that are looking for kind of some cool, calm voices. I do highly recommend Step Monster. I'm happy. They're newer too. So anyway, they were talking about, Mother's Day and how that can really be just kind of a really awkward and even sucky time sometimes for stepmoms, right? And even like for kids, like they even talked about how it's like there's no like stepdad or step parent cards for Father's Day or they and it was a struggle, and they're more like my age. So I don't know if that stuff's around like more readily now. But it was interesting to hear them talk about, that stuff, and I totally understand. But then there's talk about, well, then there's Stepmother's Day the weekend after. And it made me want to go, well, how did that start? Like, who just decided that it was Stepmother's Day? And so I wanted to share that story on here. So I guess in 2000, the day was created by Lizzie Capuzzi. I'm probably saying that name wrong, but Lizzie. And she's a 9-year-old from Pennsylvania. And I guess she decided she really wanted to celebrate her stepmother, Joyce. So she decided it should be celebrated the Sunday after Mother's Day. And Joyce and Lizzie let Senator Rick Santorum know about the day by sending him a letter. I was really surprised, by the way, because I know this is not somebody we want to affiliate warm fuzzies with, so tried to remove his name from the rest of the story. I did think it was hilarious that it was him, but on July 11th of that year, 2000, Santorum did speak on the Senate floor supporting step-parents, acknowledging the day, and that Lizzie created it. And it was actually published in the congressional record. So just so you guys know, Stepmother's Day is technically recognized in the congressional record, at least. So I thought that was kind of neat. I thought it was cute that it was the girl, it came from a stepdaughter wanting to celebrate her stepmom. And it kind of makes you feel kind of bad, though, because you realize this 9-year-old gets that there's some funny thing where we can't just celebrate the moms in our life. Because I don't know if that was you as a kid. For me, Mother's Day, it was anybody that was in a mothering role, like in my life. Like even if it was an aunt that didn't have kids of their own, like they would still get a Mother's Day card if they were in my life.
Well, I'm probably not the best one to ask because, apart from Christmas growing up, and that was kind of obligatory in terms of, as a kid receiving gifts, we weren't really that big on the holidays. Funny enough, the only time my mother ever really cared about not getting a Mother's Day gift from me was the year I tried becoming a Jehovah's Witness because of my ex-wife. So, yeah, but it's... and also too, like I'm a step parent myself, and my oldest is technically my stepson, but me personally, I don't like the term step because for me that's always been kind of a way to put an unnecessary distance. It's like for me, it's like you're either a father or you're not. There's no in between, and so for me, it's accepting. For me, and my oldest, he accepts me as his father, and that's what he would call, but his biological. If he were around, if he were around, he would still call him father as well. So, but having said that, that doesn't mean my definition of step is the right definition per se. That's just how I feel about it. So
exactly, that's your definition, and it's fine. There's a lot of people that look at it different ways. Like I am legit in a group because I used to be in a lot of stepmom groups until I kind of started feeling like maybe some of these stepmoms were the problem. Like some of the stuff that they would go on about was like really kind of petty. And granted, I do get the point that these groups are closed. It's kind of meant to be able to vent about petty shit. But then like when you read some of the stuff, I'm like, no, I feel like you're not just venting, like you're actually talking about doing things that are really kind of petty. And so I actually wound up going to a group that's like called a no nacho because let me introduce this term to you. So there's a term amongst, I guess, the stepmoms. I don't know if it's the same for stepdads, because let's just go ahead and put that out there that that's a totally culturally different thing. Like a stepdad stepping in is like, it seems way more embraced than a stepmom stepping in. Like I've even seen like these funny little memes that get shared. Like, remember guys, a stepdad steps up a stepmom only oversteps. But it's kind of the thing with it, right? But so there is a popular term amongst stepmothers called nacho kids. Like they're not mine. Like that's their whole attitude is those kids, they can live in my house all they want. They're not mine. They're not my responsibility. I am not the parent. Like, and there's a point where I understand it, but then there's a point where I feel like it's just kind of cold. Like kids don't understand it on that same level, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's one thing if we're talking like two people that are casually dating, but you know, if you're becoming a nesting partner or getting married, that's different. You are accepting that responsibility whether you want it or not.
I do kind of. That's kind of a little bit of a thing that I feel. But there are, you know, if that's not a price of admission for the biological parent and it is not a price of admission for the step parent, then you know what? All power to you. I'm not going to say it's doomed to fail. I won't because I can't. I personally I don't know if I could do that route. So like, so there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of us that do kind of really feel like, yeah, you are in a parenting role, like whether you like it or not. And really by that, I mean, it's kind of up to the kid because you can't control how that kid's going to choose to view you. You know, role model, like, or this is not my parent. Like, I'm so fortunate. For me, I'm not in that situation. Like, I've never gotten the "this is not my parent" attitude from my steps. So
I'll tell you, with my oldest, he was 1.5. I had only been dating his mother at the time for about 2 months. Out of nowhere, he turned to me with a big smile on his face and started calling me daddy. And from that day going forward, he stopped calling his biological father daddy. You know, and there's a difference between the kid that age and the kid now. Like if he saw his father now, he'd say dad. You know, he would do that. But 1.5, that's just reaction. And you know, again, at that point, it's just like if he's telling you he wants this, you know, it's and you're there in that situation, you're a father, you're a mother, or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you want to call step, that's great. But you know.
Oh yeah, like when my stepdaughter like first introduced me as her stepmom, like before I was even officially her stepmom, and there was totally that, hey, can I call you the M word talk? And I went, hey, let's talk about that, which was kind of nice. Like it was in a way, like really, it's kind of nice to have a relationship with your steps where you kind of know. Like, she really kind of voiced an expectation to me. And to be comfortable enough to do that with me, I mean, great, it was adorable and very quiet. Like, we were making, we were doing, you know, the little, it's an iron type craft. Like, you put the little tube-shaped things on, like, a little pegboard, and then you iron it, and it makes, like, a solid thing. I forget what they're called. You can buy them at IKEA, but it's just a little fun thing you can do. And we were making something with everybody's initials, and so we were doing, you know, D for dad, and like the kids' first initials. And then we went to do like, all right, and then for me, and I start making a T. And my girl child goes, you know, you could make it an M, and that's as innocently as that came up. And I thought that was like, oh, where's my chainsaw? I'm gonna. And so I mean, I'm grateful for that. But we did have a talk, and we came up with a nickname for me that is not, you know, calling me mom, because I didn't want it to be anything that caused any headbutting, you know. But I didn't also want to discourage, you know, wanting to kind of have like, hey, you know, I'd like to pet name you, because is that not really what that is? Like, I'd like to give you this affectionate name that I associate with female role model that I see as, well, person that I see as a female role model that is, you know, helping in my raising. And I thought that was really, really cool moment. So, but anywho, I'm excited for Stepmom's Day. I actually became a stepmom on Stepmother's Day last year, which is when I even learned it was a thing. I learned about Stepmother's Day on my wedding day, which was Stepmother's Day. So, by the way, happy anniversary to me. I have pandemic tested my marriage for 1 year.
You did it, and I was there virtually. I didn't crowd that day. But it is amazing that, you know, kids in that situation do end up learning a big lesson about who your family really is. and because even though there are like my father, I don't talk to him, and there are reasons for that I won't get into here. But it's like it is important to be able to choose the people that are in your life, and just because someone isn't like in this particular instance, you weren't her biological mother, but she very much views you in that sense. So that's a beautiful lesson that they were able to learn, and it's unfortunate that not every kid gets the freedom to be able to do that.
Yes, very much so. And it's like I've worked with kids. I actually fully take on. I was ready to take on the responsibility of what it would be to be looked up to. Like the first time I got a fingerprint clearance card to coach kids, like in Arizona. So that's really the ultimate way to take it, I guess, is like, hey, you human role model, just letting you know. So keep your game up.
Yeah. Don't fuck up.
Don't start being a fuck up. I look up to you.
Yeah. Well, on lighter news, they ended. That is a terrible segue. I'm sorry.
That was a bad segue. Like I on apologize. Lighter news.
Like wow, no. On by lighter, I meant in terms of the relevance of the subject material. This is irrelevant stuff, but stuff to talk about.
I get what you mean. Yeah, we weren't talking about dark. We're just talking about like deep stuff. Yes.
Well, seriously, it is. But they announced the latest inductees to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I wanted to briefly go through that list here. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. This year, Tina Turner is getting in as a solo artist. It is about time, but the thing to keep in mind here is this: to be considered eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you have to wait 25 years from when your first record debuted, which you would think with Tina Turner would have happened a long time ago. In fact, she was eligible for the first time as a solo artist in 1999. But over 20 years later, she finally gets in. And her and Carole King are the second and third women, respectively, to get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. So good choices there. I was surprised that the Go-Go's got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But but having said that, if you think about it, they were probably one of the first national all-female rock bands out there, and it came in our lifetime, so people still have to fight for this stuff. But that is definitely overall, I'm happy with that induction. It's like I'm not their biggest fan by any means, but I definitely respect their work. They were a kick-ass band for the songs that I do like. So
what's a song that I would know? Because I feel like I should. Like the Go-Go's sound familiar, and I'm getting them mixed up with like OK Go or whatever. I think right now in my head.
Yeah, let me bring up some of their songs here. I know like one of them is Our Lips Are Sealed. We Got the Beat.
There we go. Our Lips Are Sealed. I know that one. Okay, and then We Got the Beat. Yeah.
We Got the Beat, baby. Yeah. And then Belinda Carlisle, unfortunately, when the Go-Go's split up in the mid-'80s, in the late '80s, she tried her attempt at essentially becoming the '80s version of Celine Dion. With an AOR, like one of those just sappy like ballads or whatever, and that was okay, I guess. But good to see the Go-Go's getting in. Jay-Z, his first year, he got it.
I have questions. But go ahead. Can you explain Jay-Z and like why we're here with him so early?
Well, why we're here so early is honestly, look at his fan base. He's still very much a current modern artist, even though he does qualify for that 25-year period. Inducting Jay-Z is going to get a lot more viewers to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony on HBO, and it's going to get a lot more people wanting to go to the actual museum in Cleveland, Ohio. That is not to say that he is not deserving, but when you got someone like Tina Turner, who waited since 1999 to get inducted, it's like he can wait a couple of years. I very much agree. He's, if you're going to have a Hall of Fame, I think Jay-Z definitely belongs in it, and I don't And me personally, I don't try to think of something like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with a very narrow definition that it must be music made with a guitar, bass, and drums. Music is music, and
Right.
Jay-Z definitely very much fits the mold of what rock and roll artists have been over the years. But again, the only reason he's getting in on his first year, same with the Foo Fighters, is that they're still very much named acts today, and they're going to get the most attention. That's it. Again, they deserve it, but not this soon. And finally,
And I don't even know the last one, so.
And yeah, that's the thing. Todd Rundgren, funny enough, speaking of step parents, he is Liv Tyler's stepfather.
Oh, okay.
For the longest time, when Liv Tyler was growing up, her mother, had an affair with Steven Tyler, and the baby was born. But Steven Tyler did not know she existed for a while, because this was at the height of his drug habit before he got into rehab and all that. And Liv Tyler's mother, I don't know if she was married, but Todd Rundgren was very much what Liv Tyler thought was her biological father until she was told the news. So she very much looks at him as her father as well. But having said that, he did some work in the 70s. I'm not going to proclaim to know any of his songs, but I do know, I would say he got in probably more so for his producing skills, because producing everybody from like Meatloaf to Cheap Trick, he's had his hand in producing some of the most preeminent albums in rock history. So he definitely deserves it. But having said all this, on the one hand, I don't mind talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because in the case of like the Go-Go's or Carole King, I'm pretty confident that casual music fans today are probably not as aware of them or someone like Todd Rundgren. So for something like this to continue that conversation, I am all for it, and I will continue to talk about it. But let's be honest, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is bullshit. It's bullshit. There are a number of bands that were up for nomination this year that did not get in, like Iron Maiden. They're not in. Judas Priest, not in. Motorhead, not in. The Monkees, not in. There are plenty of deserving bands that very much fit the criteria of what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame looks for in groups that deserve to be inducted, that they're ignoring. And generally, metal and pop and 60s pop music are some of the ones that they will definitely look down upon. So it's bullshit.
Wow. Yeah, I mean this is the kind of stuff that I don't follow. I know people like really get excited about the Grammys and really get excited about like who's going to win what thing, and it's just never anything that caught my interest. I won't make fun of anybody that it does. It's just I've never been really hung up on these awards when they have been, like I said, Grammys or Oscars or what have you, the YouTubies or whatever the hell. Like now there's so many different awards. It's like I wouldn't even know where to keep up with stuff. Yeah. I mean, I know there's these main ones that have been traditionally recognized. So,
but even then, though, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was formed in 1987, so we're not talking about like even the Oscars. But even with the Oscars, that's just an opinion. I mean, how many?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like how many, like in 1982, I believe Chariots of Fire was Best Picture. How many people are talking about Chariots of Fire today compared to the people that are talking about E.T. or Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan? It's you can't, just because you have somebody say that this is the absolute best or these are the pinnacle, it's like clearly not. And that's what, this list of inductees for this year's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame shows. I fully support the communication that this encourages in terms of talking about the older artist, and I will gladly do that because Tina Turner definitely deserves recognition for her work. Carole King, one hell of a songwriter. Like the song "You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman." Mm-hmm. She wrote that. You've Got a Friend. she wrote that. There's a lot of stuff that she was behind. Just, I'm all for that, but this is stuff like Hall of Fame, stuff like Oscars. They really are pointless because it's just a group of people. It's gatekeeping in a way, And
I mean, do they even really get anything out of it? Like, I'm totally fine to be educated on this. Like, I don't think they get any like money. It doesn't make their albums. Like, I guess it could kind of make them worth more in general.
It does do that because for the people that do follow this, generally, they want, like if someone in your position, if they're going through the list and say Todd Rundgren, I've never heard of him. Then they go to Spotify, they go to Apple Music, and bring up Todd Rundgren tracks from there and listen. And artists that do even get nominated do find that they have a bump in sales. So that's why I support this, even though I don't like a lot of the inductions. People, I like the Go-Go's, haven't had a new album in years. Not many casual music fans are probably aware of their accomplishments. So I am all for kind of talking about these older artists and the importance of their work. But at the end of the day, it is also pointless too, because there are plenty that deserve to be there. Just because they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame does not make them bad,
Right. Like, it doesn't mean that you're not good because you didn't get in there. It just might mean, because I guess I can see that, because there's part of me that's a little confused, like, well, but wait a minute, if they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they're already well known. But then it's like, yeah, you kind of went and made the point, so because you made me read that list, I might be more likely to go look them up.
And that I got no problem with, again, because music being what it is, music, you can find beauty in a lot of stuff. It's just you're not necessarily going to know where to find it unless you have these types of conversations. So for the people that got in, good for you. A lot of them are rich beyond their wildest means. Like Tina Turner lives in Switzerland. She might not even go for at this point, because it's like, what else does she have to really worry about in terms of her career? But again, is what it is. And if it definitely encourage anybody, if you're not familiar with any of these bands, check them out. There's some great music out there from older artists that just because they're not a Rolling Stones doesn't mean it's not great.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, we all know my weird little thing with music. I don't listen to a lot of music, but who knows? Maybe I'll look some up.
Yep. Well, this week, in terms of listening to stuff, I actually came across an interesting podcast that I played you as well. And off the top of my head, I forgot the name of the podcast, and I'll find that name while we're talking. But the subject that they were talking about was misconceptions that people have today of the issues that the group formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, the Chicks, went through during the Iraq War in the early 2000s. The show is called You're Wrong About.
Yes, I was pretty sure. I almost said it a second ago, but I figured if you're looking at, you can go ahead and double check that. Yeah, it's funny because, I briefly brought up this story when we were talking about the battle for state supremacy, which I won in a totally fair and square way that broke no rules at all. And
wink, wink,
showing that Texas is just the optimum state for pride. So
bowling for soup.
But hey, the Chicks though, right? Like, now getting to listen to all of that, even the stuff that led up, like before the whole statement was made. And I guess the whole "not my president" thing was not at all what she said. It was a comment that was made overseas, and I didn't know that. But I was very aware that they were made fun of. It reminded me that Natalie Maines. Her last? Maines. I don't know why I always want to call her Barnes, but Natalie Maines. I do remember a lot of comments on their weight, and actually in the music video that they talked about that they had done, that was probably, if you did know any song from them, it's from the soundtrack Runaway Bride. Like, I remember that being made fun of, but I didn't know why. And now I kind of get it, because I guess before any of that had happened, there was all of this stuff going on in the background where they were like not making any money. They were actually being very outspoken about it in a time where really not a lot of people spoke up until later. But it was the tale of the 90s of these contracts for these bands. And I guess that was going on in the background. And they were just openly talking shit about like Sony Records and stuff like that. And then they refused to work with Sony Tennessee anymore because of that whole thing. Like, they said they would stay on with the label, and it was all because they just decided to go and make their own. They did their own recordings. They just basically two middle fingers it and did what they wanted to do. And Sony's like, oh, okay, well, your music's good, so we want to keep you. And there was a lot of uppityness in the country music scene when they refused to when they said, we're not working with Tennessee anymore. Because I guess Tennessee was a little bit more in their country world. So I didn't know that there was already that stacked against them, where, other artists already had their nose up when it came to the Dixie Chicks. So that was incredibly interesting to learn, because I thought more of that hate came after. But then talking about it, I'm like, no, yeah, because that music video was well before any of that controversy happened. And I remember the weird body shaming stuff.
I know I was a big fan of Howard Stern at the time, and he would, anytime the Dixie Chicks were brought up, did, make comments about Natalie Maine's weight. And funny enough, I know my sister did too. There was like a few days after 9/11, there was like a big TV special that happened where like musicians sang like somber songs, and like actors came on and said tearful speeches, and like one of them was a Dixie Chicks singing something, and my sister made a joke about Natalie Maine's being fat or something. Sorry, Colleen, but it's in terms of that, in terms of the body shaming, that was probably more to do with the 90s being the 90s than anything else. But in terms of how they interacted in the country music scene, one podcast I would recommend you check out is Cocaine and Rhinestones. It's hosted by a guy by the name of Tyler Mahan Coe. His father is a legendary country singer, David Allan Coe, and kind of details the history of country music. And it's really fascinating, but it very much shows that, country music is very territorial in a lot of ways. I think a lot of it does come from its beginnings, because the people that ended up forming country music were very much poor people that, were like the term hillbilly, of course, it was the whole concept of that. If you watch the documentary Hillbilly, which we've talked about on the show before, was just done by ruling classes to start to make the plight of the innocent poor people in Appalachia territories seem trivial, so that the businesses could do whatever they want in terms of the mining situation. And unfortunately, that label stuck. And I get how. I would get why you would be defensive, I guess, and not and be fighting against new stuff that comes along. I get it somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a mixed bag, because it kind of goes back to that. I don't understand fighting change. I don't understand. Well, I mean, I don't understand fighting it to the point where you have to say that it's bad. Because here's the thing. There's going to almost always be like that demographic that is still going to love Coca-Cola Classic, right? And then there's the demographic that really, really loves like Coca-Cola Zero. And then what's cool is there can be an overlap of people that like both, and they don't need to hate each other. But I do find it interesting, and I guess it just goes right along with like that the psychological thing that happens, where it's people bond more in a negative. So what's weird is we bond more when we get along with somebody who's helping us fight with somebody else. So that's where you get like some of the fandom things, and where it can be playful and funny sometimes. Sometimes it crosses a line. Like, it's different jeering fans, like, in high school football, for example. Like, it doesn't normally come fisticuffs. I mean, sometimes in Texas it does. But, a lot of it's playful, like, at least on an official capacity. But speaking of the Dixie Chicks and that song, Earl's Gonna Die, that actually was an issue because the school I went, I don't see any reason to really hide this. I went to school in like Farmersville, Texas, and then we were in competition with our neighboring town, Princeton. And I'm pretty sure this is the correct school that did this too. But they started playing Earl's Gonna Die and had their mascot like play out like killing our mascot, which was a farmer. And so that's how I got introduced to the song Earl's Gonna Die, because like my mom didn't play the Dixie Chicks in the house. Like, she was a little bit more into, like Brooks and Dunn and Tracy Bird and, totally different than Dixie Chicks. That was that wasn't her style. She kind of liked Shania Twain, and I think that's as girly, because Shania at that point had gotten very poppy too. So my mom was definitely Coke classic, right? Because there's that example.
Old school country,
She liked the older country. She wasn't really, at first, she didn't like it as much. But she did eventually get a little bit more broad in her music. But back then, wasn't listening to it. So I remember that's how I learned.
She likes both kinds now, country and Western.
Well, I know she had like a huge thing for Ricky Martin out of nowhere. I was like, that's different. Okay.
Well, I guess everybody wants to live La Vida Loca at least once in their life.
She probably was like, you could Vita my Loca, like, or something like that. I don't know. But
if only I had a Menudo reference there, but go ahead.
But anywho, so that's like some of the early, because I didn't really listen to them. Like, I wasn't into country. Like, back when I still lived in Texas, that was already at the point where I was just done with country music, probably because my mom played it all the time. So I wouldn't have wanted to listen to it because to me it was just too close to Coke Classic. I didn't want anything to do with any of the Coca-Cola brand at that point.
Yeah. At the time, I mean, myself, I'm not even going to pretend I listen to the Dixie or the Chicks now, and I certainly wasn't going to listen to them then. But I wasn't even listening to that much country music apart from some Johnny Cash at that point. But like right around the time the Iraq War thing happened, that was right around like when he passed anyway. But yeah, they just, even their pop stuff just never really appealed to me. Just as musicians, and this is, if you love the Chicks, great, continue to love them, but they were always just a little too bleh, just too, I actually was surprised at some of the early music that they played, the traditional stuff, because if it was more along that lines, then they could have had me, because to talk about the show we just did this past Wednesday, the Date Night Double, we talked about two country bands, Jomo and the Possum Posse, great band, and also Old Crow Medicine Show, and both albums opened up with a good old-fashioned fiddle, and hearing the fiddle work from the early Dixie Chick stuff, that's like, I would have liked to hear that a little bit more. That would have been more my speed, but
but they really wanted a different sound. Like, they knew they could break into a younger audience. I totally understand. And what I liked about that episode is they really did go into how music production, it's not as easy as, contract, go make all the music you want to make. I mean, that's not how that worked. They will not just screw you, but they will also design you, because you owe them. Like, I did think it was funny, some of the tangents they went into on how, like, the creative ways some artists got out of some of their contracts. Like, I forget who it was that just intentionally made nothing but shit music, and they wound up suing him for, like, not, like, basically they caught wind that he was just making crap on purpose. But then it turned out, like, some people really liked the albums.
Oh, there's a few people. Like, I know Lou Reed, I forgot the name of the album. Let me see if I can find it here. But he had an album that, like, one album left on a contract that he had, and what he ended up doing was making an album full of white noise. and called it an album.
That's great.
Yeah. And
see, I like creative ways around it, talking to my stepdaughter about music because, she's getting older and I'm just one of those people that like, yeah, maybe you should be aware of what your music means. So I like to kind of teach some of the cool ones. But Sarah Bareilles got around that in a very creative way. The whole song, I'm Not Gonna Write You a Love Song, is actually to the record company because they told her, you need a love song for this album. And so if you go and actually read the words to I'm Not Gonna Write You a Love Song, it becomes so much more clear that it is not about a romantic situation. It is very much her telling the production people, the record producing company, that she's not going to write them a love song because they asked for it because they need one. Yeah. So a lot of sass. I love the creative sass behind some of this. I don't know. Are record deals still that bad?
Oh, well, first of all, the album from Lou Reed is from 1975 called Metal Machine Music.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
Secondly, it more than likely, yeah. The last big example I can think of is Prince. In the early 80s, he signed a 10-year, a multi-album agreement with Warner Brothers. And then they started fiddling around with him, and he wanted to get out of the contract, but they kept him to it. So that's why he switched his name to the symbol, and
why they talked about it.
Yeah, and then in the 90s, he released a bunch of albums that he knew were garbage, but he just made as many albums as he could in order to get through that contract.
Maybe that was who they were talking about. So yeah. It's possible because they had a few examples. Anywho, I thought it was absolutely fascinating. I also thought it was super interesting and kind of heartbreaking, some of why and how some of the lead singer stuff happened. And, I thought it was hilarious that Natalie was always a little rebel, I guess, her skipping class and then nagging to the principal about why didn't I get in trouble? Because when the Mexican kids skip class, they get in trouble. And really was just, it just seemed like a recipe that, when they explained a little bit of her background, I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand why this happened. And then it was really interesting because really all it came down to was she refused to backtrack it. The way that they told it, what it seemed is she refused to say, I support the war. And because those words never came out, there was no forgiveness factor. But then there was the question of were they ever really truly canceled? Because I guess they were still quite successful, just not as much as they were in Texas, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's define success. I mean, it's the country albums they made up until that point. The podcast made a very clear, emphasis on the fact that country music being what it is, essentially after the Iraq War thing, their albums up to that point essentially stopped selling. Which kind of reminiscent of what we see talked about today in terms of cancel culture. Now, in terms of the band, obviously they're still going strong. They're not as big as they were in the early 2000s, but what band can really say they've hold that level of interest for that long a period? Not many can. The fact that they're still around and touring they're very much a success.
Yes, and so. Something that is worth pointing out there, though, country is one of those genres that tends to hang on. So it is actually kind of a way that they did fall out in a sense, because that was something that I had put together was wow, yeah, country musicians, they stay around. There's not all of them, but there's enough of them that still perform that people still talk about even when I was younger.
But that's the thing though with country music. The thing is, it's for the longest time, and it's still very much prevalent today, the country music labels will focus on the younger artist. That does not mean the older artists have gone away, but similar to hip hop music, do you still see hip hop stations playing Public Enemy? Not really. Do you still see them playing some Big Daddy Kane or something like that? And that's a deep cut for folks out there. But they don't do that because they generally want to just push what is the latest artists that are out there. And country is very much guilty of that because, like, the only reason Johnny Cash got big again was that Rick Rubin saw that he was Johnny Cash had no record contract, and Rick Rubin was like, "Why don't you have a record contract? You're Johnny Cash." And that's how that resurgence came about. So in terms of, I think there are some steps that have been made since the Johnny Cash thing, for instance, if in terms of the older artist being able to make albums that are promoted by the country music companies. But again, I think of like Loretta Lynn of all people. The only reason her name came back, I think it was like 2010 to 2012. She came out with a pretty popular album, but the only reason that was popular is that Jack White from the White Stripes produced it. Unfortunately, other people are having to go to country music fans and be like, your legends are still here. Listen to them. So it is weird, and it's kind of the same thing with like metal too. It seems like the newer forms of music, and country is still quite new. It's like the newer forms of music do tend to have gatekeeping in a way, in terms of the people at the record companies are more focused on now, and not the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But anyway, it does tie into what we're seeing in the news today, because they made the podcast did talk about how this was really, since Sinead O'Connor with ripping up the picture of the Pope, this was the first time you saw a celebrity face a backlash of this sort. And they talked about how the internet, you would only need a minimum of 1,000 people making enough noise on Twitter to make it something hashtag worthy that other people are talking about. It's like a lot of people are. It's weird in society today, because there are a lot of people that do pick up pitchforks awfully fast, like Gal Gadot the other day. I sent you a tweet that she put out, and I
liked it.
Yes, she said, this is a vicious cycle that has been going on for far too long in regards to Israel bombed the innocent Palestinians again. And, she went on to say she hopes both sides are able to, that the hostility ends, blah, blah, blah. But you had a number of people that ended up just ripping into her because at one point in time, she was a member of the Israeli military. When, after doing just one Google search and clicking on one link, you find out that when she was in the military, she was essentially a fitness instructor. And when she was in the military, that's how she ended up starting her career, because she did a Maxim magazine spread.
Yeah, and what's funny is I liked the part where she goes, "The army wasn't that difficult for me. The military gave me good training for Hollywood." Well, I was like, she's witty. I think she just kind of puts those little things in there, but that made me giggle. I don't know if it was supposed to, but it did.
Oh, I actually, there's another story that just came out recently too that she confirmed about Joss Whedon threatening her career on the set of Justice League, and how she ended up talking to people higher up and getting that nixed. So she further put more fuel on the fire in terms of Joss Whedon. But it sounds like Joss Whedon has been an asshole for a long time, so I don't mind assholes like that getting called out.
Yeah.
But it's the thing is this, when it comes to her, and what I don't like about how some of the people are reacting to her, and it kind of ties in with the Dixie Chicks thing, is they're making an assumption that because she was in the military, she must have been on the front lines or something. She must have been killing Palestinians or something like that, when in fact, Israeli military service is mandatory. Each Israeli citizen has to have a minimum of 2 years of military service, or they face jail. Everybody had to do it. Just because she was a part of the military, something she legally had to do, does not mean she necessarily agrees with all of the actions of her government. And even if she did, again, she should not be blamed for those actions because she was a fitness trainer in the military, for goodness sake. If you're going to be angry about something that somebody does that legitimately deserves it.
I didn't even know that. No, I mean, I didn't even know that she was in the military. I totally understand. She was like, I taught gymnastics and calisthenics. The soldiers loved me because I made them fit. Like that. That's it. That's like really. She doesn't have much to say about it. I'm sure it's also because I think she's gorgeous. So I will totally put it out there. I have a bit of a crush on this beautiful woman, and I really respect kind of what she's had to say about it. She's like, it's what you do. You learn discipline and respect, and you learn that your freedom is earned. So even the way that she did talk about like why it happens, it was very much like to that point. Yeah. And it made, like, I don't know, this actually made me respect her a little bit more. I think she handled it, or is handling it, because this is probably something that's not done yet. But so far, she seems to have handled it pretty well, and is handling it pretty well. But I would be down to see how it continues to play out. It's just interesting how much we kind of hear about the scumbagginess of the Hollywood scene and how it happens to just fucking anybody, it seems. I don't know. I didn't know about Brendan Fraser, for example. I just learned about like his whole thing with him. Yeah. Like he disappeared for a while because I guess he got sexually harassed, and it just completely derailed his film career. Like I remember at one point going, "What happened to Brendan Fraser?" And I didn't know. Actually, I think the Mr. Reverend brought it up here within this last day or two, and I had no idea. So it's just kind of interesting. I didn't know Joss Whedon was a dick. I didn't know that happened to Brendan Fraser. I don't know. Maybe I just need to take my head out of the sand and quit being such an ostrich about Hollywood. But I don't know. Like it doesn't really make me want to learn more about it.
Well, I mean, in regards to the Gal Gadot thing, for me, it's like one thing I want to make clear is that when I'm talking about this particular instance, I'm talking about how people are reacting to her, not about what's happening in Israel and Palestine. I think the Israeli government is very clearly doing some things that they should be absolutely ashamed of in terms of how they are treating the Palestinian people. That should go without saying. But, it is... When it comes to hearing about these stories about people in Hollywood, it can be heartbreaking because I mean once I came to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I fell in love with that show, and in a lot of ways it was great to see women in positions of power that they weren't normally given for that type of story, and hearing about everything that cast had to go through, that's just sad in a lot of ways. But when it comes to her, Gal Gadot here, it struck me how people are just making comments like they know everything about her when their comments show that they clearly don't. And also, why does it matter what her comments are? Really, do they affect anything? Don't know.
Yeah, she's. It's magic words, right? If you're not supporting or specifically saying like the right thing, then you stand a chance at getting some of this backlash. And that even goes back a little bit to the Dixie Chicks thing, right? Like they didn't really care that a singer was talking about politics, because they never cared when it was, America fuck yeah, or, we'll put a boot in your ass, and all of that stuff is fine. Right. But when somebody maybe implies that they're not okay. That's what it was. They didn't sing it. So the thing is if you don't perform it, that's when it's bad, right? No, sorry, just digressing a little bit there. But she didn't even say anything like expressing any support for anything. She just was in it. And I don't know. I get like a little wound up when we start mixing the Hollywood with the politics. But I understand. I'm not saying that they don't have a right to speak, because there's a bunch of people like the shut up and sing thing, right? Shut up and act. Shut up, like stop voicing your opinion. I am actually like voice your opinion as much as you want, I guess, but at the same time, it does get frustrating, and it's not because they voice their opinion. It gets frustrating because of, like you said, how people react to an opinion being voiced.
Yeah, I mean, and I think of some recent tweets from Donald Glover that kind of tying in with this, where one tweet he says, "We're getting boring stuff out of Hollywood and not even experimental mistakes because people are afraid of getting canceled." And in some ways, he's right. Whether we're talking about people not wanting to talk about certain topics or whatnot, it's just, or if they're afraid to say certain jokes, I don't know. It's just, we're in a weird time, and I think with the cancel culture thing, it's like we're in a time where I think this is the first time you've had people that were in the minority that actually have some power to speak up. And I think we're more than anything in a transition period. It's like, I don't think raunchy jokes are going to end because now we can't, make gay jokes, but they have to evolve. You can evolve and have a raunchy joke without it being, homophobic. It's I would like to see people challenge themselves more. Like Big Mouth. Look at what Big Mouth has done on Netflix. They are very much a raunchy show. It is not for kids whatsoever. But I also I would not say that show would be what I would consider offensive.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of do get it in a sense, though, because comedians are really kind of like the court jesters of the time. I think that's why they tend to get along or get away with it more when they do make political commentary. Comedians busting on whoever the president is not new, But I guess what makes me a little bit sad is when you've got that confusion, right? As far as, is this a racist joke or is this a joke making fun of racists? Is this a joke making fun of a racist mentality? And that's where that is supposed to be a little bit of that court gesture type thing to it is making fun of this existing. And in a way, because it is making fun of it existing, it is shaming that thing. And so when you get that comedy muddled with the comedy of somebody who just wants to say a bunch of horrible racist or sexist shit, that's where I get insufferably frustrated. Because that's a little bit of like kind of John Cleese's attitude. Like I really love John Cleese. I know like I've shared some quotes. And I think he's actually probably hit the news recently because he makes jokes. But he will also very clearly say, like, he doesn't dumb down his jokes. And as this totally paraphrasing, but essentially what it is he thinks to himself, is this a good joke or are one or two stupid people going to misinterpret this joke and be offended by it? And if the answer is just one or two people are like, I'm sorry, stupid people, there are certain disadvantages to being stupid, is kind of the overall quote. Now, he's not actually trying to make a comment on intelligence or somebody's education. He's saying if you are being stupid about something. I mean, come on. You've been stupid about something in the past, right? But you're not a stupid person.
Yeah.
Come on, admit it. We'll practice some fucking shadow work on this show. I'll drag you through it. No, but right, like any honest person can say that they've been stupid about it. But I'm sure those quotes from him also get people really mad. Because he doesn't, he straight says, I'm not going to curb my comedy. I know the intention behind my comedy. And it's not that. Like, it's not, like, he's not the type of person that actually wants to insult, like, people without just cause. Like, he's definitely the type of person that would be making fun of the racist. Does that make sense a little bit? Yeah. Like, I don't really take his character as somebody who would be trying to tear down somebody based on their race or their gender or anything like that.
To me, I think it's people. It's kind of like in wrestling. Like there is a connection here because starting in the 90s when wrestling started getting really big, a lot of the bad guys started trying to become cool bad guys because by doing that they could sell more merchandise on their thing. But what ended up happening is that when they would do something that would normally cause the audience to boo, they were getting cheered. And some guys don't want to be booed. You know, I mean, take a look at the legendary comedian Don Rickles. Like, to be able to do his material, you had to have balls of steel because you are insulting everybody. Was Don Rickles like that in real life? Of course not. But, you know, to be able to deliver that, he's putting on a persona, and he's by doing what he did, he showed how stupid that is. You know, because he was so good at you know, insulting anybody and everything. You know, he showed how silly that is. So it's but he had the courage to do that. And I think we're at a time now to where people are getting afraid, you know, rightfully or wrongfully so, about, does this thing I'm saying, is this going to get me in trouble? And I think the big thing, I think people should welcome that, because, you know, it's, well, I don't think people should not say certain jokes. I don't believe in that mindset whatsoever. I also think not everybody is a Richard Pryor or a George Carlin. You really have to ask yourself, are you the appropriate one to make this joke or not? And I think that's what people need to do, instead of the blind defense of, I'm doing this because I should be free to say whatever. Well, technically, yeah, but that doesn't mean you're free from the responsibility of what could potentially come your way. So if you're going to say something, mean it.
And be ready for it. Like, that is part of it. Like, as cold as it can sound to say, like, hey, if you speak out, I'm sorry if there is insert blank effect. There is cause and effect. And so it's understandable that it goes back. Like, I love going back to the chicks on this now, because that one, it just seems so clear that would be an opinion to voice that would be against a lot of their purchasing demographic. Yeah. So it did totally make sense that when they verbalized that, being in the land of country music that is very patriotic and very usually pro and supporting the wars that we decide to do, when speaking against that you might lose some people, which, granted, it wasn't even really that many, it turned out. It didn't take that many to come together and, like, you know, bombard some of these smaller stations. So that's where we get into, you know, the internet kind of making what might just be a handful of the demographic feel like a lot more of the demographic, because they're able to kind of pitch it to other people and weaponize it and bring people together, because it goes back to, oh, they said this thing, now I've got all these feelings and we're bonding over this thing that we both hate, now let's do something about it. And that goes back to sociology.
Yeah. Which kind of ties into what we've talked about before. At the end of the day, there needs to be some heavy regulation on social media, because each of these social media companies, their algorithms are in place to essentially reward you for coming back, reward you emotionally, give you the proper dopamine hits. And, you know, what more destruction in the country do we need to see before, you know, we put some steps to make sure that doesn't happen? Because it's like, if I am not saying that anybody, you know, whether it's me, like the Star Wars story that I brought up on the show before, or somebody in their case, a multi-millions selling musician that says something, it's like, if you do say something that makes somebody pissed off, whether it's based on fact or not, you do got to deal with that consequence. But, you know, it's like, at the end of the day, if we can maybe keep some of the tools, these weaponizing tools that are currently being used, away from people that are abusing it. Because, like, look what happened to James Gunn, the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy films. Like, people that were not happy that he was against Trump went back and found some tweets that he made a decade ago that he had already apologized for, that were very much bad. But because they brought that back from 10 years ago, he got temporarily fired. Now, granted, cooler heads prevailed, and he's coming back for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But, you know, how many jokes on social media did you make 10 years ago that you think could come back to haunt you? Because, again, it's like a joke written there. People don't, if they don't know you, they don't know your context. How would they take it serious? How would they know it's a joke?
Exactly. And that is where that becomes a risk that you take, especially when you get bigger. And that's where it's like, really, honestly, at least in the world of comedy, that's where you do at least get that familiarity with your fan base, right? Because a lot of them watched you grow and they do understand your comedy. So that's where sometimes when comics get big and then they get new people and somebody that maybe hasn't understood or even evolved with them, like can misunderstand what they mean. And that almost goes again into like, there was a Larry the Cable Guy joke, I guess, that they were making on the Dixie Chicks. But here's my thing with that. He's doing a character when he does that. That is not his voice. That's not his real voice. So
I would hope not. No.
me being somebody who understands like a little bit of the idea of an improv character, and if that's what you're doing as your comedy bit, it would make me wonder if that was part of that character and not actual any hate towards the Dixie Chicks. But it's so hard to tell because I never saw earlier renditions of him. I saw him in Blue Collar Comedy Tour, which is a little bit, early for most people. So I did kind of catch a little bit of that, but it was just happening to know that that's not his voice. And so in my brain, I put together, oh, well, maybe this is a character bit. But it's hard to gauge because there was a lot of hate in that bit to where it's like, now is there a point where that's also not a good enough reason to make a joke that's hateful? Like, is there now a limit to what our characters are going to do?
And I know what you're talking about because they brought up the joke, but the thing that they did not do was play the audio of him saying it, because as they read it, it wasn't funny. And it being Larry the Cable Guy, let's be honest, if I heard him say it, it's probably not funny anyway. But
yeah, he's not my cup either, but he does have a very important presentation style to his jokes. Like, you kind of need to see him.
Yeah, and that's the thing with any comedian. The joke is more in the delivery and not the words themselves. Otherwise Twitter would have a lot of jokes that everybody just loves,
Basically.
But
I hope that I don't get canceled at some point over a tweet I made, testing jokes on Twitter, as many people do, because that's sometimes where you decide, okay, not going to tell that joke. Like, I've done that when I did stand-up back in Arizona. My brief little stint, my toe dipping into stand-up that I did was, you test stuff on Twitter, and that's a really good way to gauge, like, is it even going to get, like, if you hashtag funny or hashtag comedy, does it get anything or does it get nothing? So if it gets nothing, you don't use it. But I don't know. I don't know how I would react to people trying to cancel me. I'd probably just be like, all right, cool, Mud Hut it is.
Honestly, it's different for everybody, I guess. I mean, I know, like, in my very small instance, when I made that stupid joke about wishing I had a terminal illness so I could watch The Force Awakens, it's just, you keep quiet, let people say their thing, and it goes away. It's the people that like, there was, I think her name is Chelsea Kane, who lives in Portland, by the way, an artist who said something off color about trans people, and then people called her out on Twitter, and then in one of the next issues of her comic, she actually quoted one of those quotes making fun of the people that were goofing on her, and people were ripping into her, and she kept on just trying to apologize, saying, I'll do this, I'll do that, but the thing she had to do to make it go away, stay off Twitter for a month.
Noted. So if somebody tries to cancel me, just stay off Twitter for a month. But see, that's what's funny is, like, hey guys, I have almost given up on finding a house for far less. I will gladly still go live in a mud hut. So
yeah, well, there's also I would think something like TikTok would actually be better for jokes anyway, because it's a short video, but in that video, with everything, you can deliver a joke and people won't necessarily misinterpret what it means, because they get the full presentation, not just the words.
Well, I mean, it depends though, right? Because it goes back to that point. It only takes one really angry hornet to go out and find an entire nest willing to attack. And there's some topics that with some people that they don't really care if it's really the intention is to be a joke or to make fun of an attitude about something. It's, I heard this joke, it is about this, therefore this person is blankist. Sexist, racist, a bigot. I mean,
Daniel Tosh, remember about a decade ago, he made a rape joke and got in a lot of trouble for that. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's like, if anything, I would say to people, understand that it's okay to not like a joke. It's okay to be angry at it, but it's still a joke. Just because you don't find it funny doesn't make it not a joke. Yeah. You know, and just if you don't like somebody, don't go see them in a comedy club. Don't watch their TV show, and also don't be. I don't like the people that want to make it to where somebody can't get a job or something like that. You know, over words. You know, like the Louis C.K. thing. That's different. But even with Louis, he's famous enough that he can rent his own theaters and be there on his own. Great. But, you know, it's complicated. We're not going to solve it with this podcast here, but, you know.
No, not at all. I do like visiting the topic from time to time because Hollywood is just, it's such an intense hobby to keep up with. You know, you learn new stuff every day, and some of it just like really fucking disappoints you.
But the important thing for me is to just take a deep breath and don't be a part of the pitchfork crowd. Doesn't mean you can't be upset over something stupid that a celebrity does, or even say, hey, they did something so bad I'm not gonna have their product again. But what does it really help to you for you to go on Twitter and for someone like Gal Gadot, for instance, to at her and say, I don't like you because you were in the Israeli military? First of all, she's not going to see what you wrote. Yeah. Second of all, even if she did, why should she care? You know, why put this effort in? I don't get why people put a lot of effort into some of the silly stuff, but just take a deep breath and just think about the bigger picture. Is something Wonder Woman, the actress who plays Wonder Woman, said really that important in the grand scheme of things? More than likely, if you're being honest, you're going to find out the answer is no.
No, we'll probably forget about it in a few months, to be totally honest. If not a few months, then a few years. Because to be fair, right now we've got the pandemic and nothing else to do but think about the things that we want to be mad about. So yeah. Well, that is unfortunately how some people are dealing with it, right? That's where it's like I've tried to lay off of any public comments anymore. Public, you win, you're grumpy, and I'm going to let you guys have the public comment sections for a little while.
Well, I am just going to look forward to this weekend because it is the professor's birthday on the 15th, and we're going to be up in a cabin all weekend with a hot tub. So I'm excited for that.
Very nice. Yeah, I already know for stepmom / our anniversary weekend, we're going to try to plan a gorge trip. And 'cause I've never been there, so I might want to see some of these places before I move, and it's not going to be as readily available. I mean, it turns out I very well may be coming back for haunted house season. I'm talking to the owners and still kind of negotiating that, but the early verdict is that they might not want to replace me. So turns out I'm valuable to some people. That's why I say, like, it depends on who you ask. Like, there's some humans out there that think I'm hot garbage, and then there are others that think I'm very, very good at the things that I put my mind and heart towards. And I just try to stick around with those people.
Yes, like this podcast here, for instance. So I think we will wrap it up here this week. Any more thoughts before we go?
No, everybody, if you enjoy your holiday weekend, I mean, it's not a holiday for a lot of people, but no matter what you're doing, may it be a birthday, may it be, celebrating stepmom's day or just having a fucking weekend, just have a good fucking weekend. That's how I'm going to leave it.
Damn right. As you heard, I'm going to have a great weekend myself with the professor. So I'm going to do that next Wednesday. Kim the Geek will be back on the show. That is, after more than a year absence, finally able to connect with her and record an episode. So that will be out on Wednesday. And if you haven't done so already, check out the Date Night Double. It is a Spotify exclusive show. It is on our regular podcast feed, but because we can actually play songs here, you can only listen to that episode on Spotify. Like I mentioned before, we talked about Local Motive from Jomo and the Possum Posse and Volunteer from Old Crow Medicine Show. And I did end up making a GIF that I put on the Twitter page advertising it of Join the Hoedown at Friends Talking Nerdy. And it was a clip of Homer, dancing to a hoedown, and Lisa was blowing into a jug.
I remember that episode. And by the way, a quick update on my spider friend. Like earlier, I did get up and I caught him. So I'm going to go put him safely outside with his adorable little spider paws to be free in the wild.
Yeah. So that's weird too, because I did read an article one time that like we are so big to a spider that they really can't comprehend us.
Yeah.
So like putting it into a jar like that must be like, what the fuck, man?
Oh, I know. This is again like I am this spider's alien abduction story. I'm like, how did I get all the way in the backyard?
Now I'm thinking of Bill Hicks when he mentioned all of the UFO sightings always appear in places like Fife, Alabama.
I don't think I ever actually shared that abduction bit that I said that I was going to from SNL. It's like one of my favorite ones. I can't think of the
Kate McKinnon one.
Yes, Kate McKinnon. Yeah. I don't think I ever actually shared that. Now that I've made the second few weeks in a row of abduction jokes, I'm going to go find it right now and actually share it because it's a really funny bit. You will not be disappointed.
Okay. Well, it's Saturday Night Live, so I probably will be, but that's a different story for a different day.
That's just like your opinion, man. Like
that is true. That is true. I mean, it's weird. It's like I've noticed, especially thanks to Saturday Night Live, because of Peacock has all the seasons Saturday Night Live, and it's like my definition of what's funny really came from my junior high school years, from watching stuff like Saturday Night Live, and anything beyond that is just like, that is not funny. They don't know what funny is. It's Wayne's World. That's funny. Come on, but.
All right. Well, we should actually probably wrap up this time. I think we were trying to wrap up, and then we just start talking about shit because we're friends, and that's what we do.
And we're talking.
It's like when you try to get off the phone with your mom. Like, it's just going to take 2 or 3 or maybe 50 goes, and then you're actually done with the conversation. But,
no, you hang up. No,
you hang up. No, you hang up, Tim. You hang up. But all right. Yeah, let's wrap this up before we're too slappy. We apparently need to, drink some water or some shit. I don't know.
I got some weed in my future. But, yeah, let's wrap it up. We will see you all next time. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.